Hey everyone, today I'm going to cover section 7.3, circles. So just like parabolas, we're going to start out with the geometric definition of a circle, and it's the collection of points equidistant from a single point, which we call the center. So unlike a parabola, there's only one object in play with a circle. Remember, a parabola had the focus and a directrix. A circle only has the center, and then it's the set of all points that are the same distance from it. Just move that so there, that looks better. And this distance is what we call r, is the radius. Well, just like with a parabola, the center I'll label hk, and then some random point on the outside of the circle I'll label xy. And what the geometric definition says is that this distance, which I'll label d1, is equal to r. Well, d1 is just the distance between 2 points, so that's the square root of x minus h squared plus y minus k squared. That equals r. And there's only one thing to make this a little bit more simplified, is that we square both sides of the equation so that there is no square root. And we get the equation of a circle. And thankfully, because a circle, no matter how you rotate it, looks the same, there is only one equation. We're not going to have multiple equations for a circle. So the formula for a circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared, where h comma k is the center and r is the radius. So find the equation of the circles graphed below. So the first thing we're going to do is find the center, which seems to be about right there. So the center is 1/2, comma 3/2, and then the radius is 1, 2, and 1/2. So r equals 5/2. So we get x minus 1/2 squared plus y minus 3/2 squared equals 5/2 squared. 5/2 squared is 5/2 times 5/2, which is 25/4. So that's the equation of this circle. Now I recognize this as a half circle, but to find the equation of this half circle, I am going to imagine it. And I'm drawing it very poorly, as a full circle. Well, this full circle has a center at -2, 0, and a radius of 3. So the equation of the full circle would be x plus 2 squared plus y minus 0, which is just y squared, equals 3 squared, which is 9. Now, to get the equation of a half circle, you either have to solve for x or y. Well, if I look at this, because it's the left half of the circle, that's the same as saying that x values are negative. So since the x values are negative, that means I am going to solve for x, and hopefully I'm going to get a plus or minus, and then I'm going to choose the negative side. So let's go ahead and do that. Solve for x, subtract y squared from both sides. Take the square root. Now remember, The square root of x plus 2 squared is the absolute value of x plus 2. And this is where, because x is always less than negative 2, that will be negative. So you get x plus 2 equals negative square root of 9 minus y squared. Subtract 2. We get x equals negative 2 minus the square root of 9 minus y squared. So in general, if you have the right or left half of a circle, you solve for x, use negative for left, use positive for right. If you have the top or bottom of a circle, you solve for y, use positive for top, negative for bottom. Okay. Now for these types of questions where I give you the properties of a circle, just like with a parabola, I start off by graphing it. So 3, 5 is about up there. Negative 1, negative 2 is about right there. That's my center. Very poorly drawn circle. And my radius is that distance. So I'm going to calculate r first, which is 4 squared plus 7 squared. 4 is coming from 3 minus negative 1, which is 3 plus 1, and the 7 is coming from 5 minus negative 2, which is 5 plus 2. So we get 16 plus 49, square root of 65. So then we get x minus 3 squared equals y, not equals, plus y minus 5 squared equals the square root of 65 squared, which is x minus 3 squared plus y minus 5 squared equals 65. Now part B, the endpoints of a diameter. This one I'm not going to try to draw a picture, even though I would suggest it to a student. Here I'm going to just use the definition of what a diameter is. A diameter is a full-length line segment that goes through the center of a circle. So that means in order to find the center of this circle, I need the midpoint of these 2 points. To find a midpoint, you take the average of the x values, so you add them up, divide by 2, and the average of the y values. Add them up and divide by 2. 1/2 plus 3/2 is 4/2. 4 minus 1 is 3. 4/2 is 2. And 2 over 2 is 1. So we get 1 comma 3/2. And then the radius is the distance from the center to either of the endpoints. So that'll be the square root of 1 minus 1/2 squared plus 3/2 minus 4 squared, which is the square root of 1/4 plus 25/4, which equals the square root of 26/4. So we get x minus 1 squared plus y minus 3/2 squared equals the square of this square root, which just cancels out, so equals 26/4. That's the equation for this circle. Now finally, we want to graph these. Well, in order to graph them, we do need to get it in standard form. Now this is where, if you've been using the quadratic formula instead of completing the square up to this point, you're going to be at a disadvantage. Because both of our variables are squared this time, we can't use the quadratic formula as a shortcut, so we do need to complete the square for both variables. Oh, and there is a typo in the notes. That should be a 3. Okay. And I'm adding the 4 to both sides. So I'm going to factor a 3 out of the x squareds. Factor 3 out of the y squareds. take half of b squared, which is -1 squared, which is 1. So I need to add a 1 here. But that 1 is technically 3 times 1. So that means I add a 3 over here. Do the same thing with the y's. So 1/2 times 1 squared, 1/2 squared, which is 1/4. So I add 1/4 right there, which is technically 3 times 1/4. So I add 3/4. So we get 3x minus 1 squared plus 3 y plus 1/2 squared equals 31/4. Now, all I'm going to do is multiply by 1/3 on both sides. And we get x minus 1 squared plus y plus 1/2 squared equals 31/12. And now to graph this, I plot the coordinate 1, -1/2. Now this does get a little tricky because I do not know what 31/12 is. So I go to my calculator. And that's approximately 2.6. So I go 1, 2.6, 0.5, 1, 2.1, 0.5, 1, 2.1, 1, 2.6. And draw a circle. There we go. And finally for b, remember f of x is just another way of saying y. So we get y equals negative square root of 4x minus x squared. So this does tell me it is the bottom half of a circle from what I discussed before. But now we kind of want to go backwards. So I'm actually going to square both sides because when you square a negative, it becomes positive. Add the x squared and subtract the 4x from both sides. We get x squared minus 4x plus y squared equals 0. Take half of b squared. Add that to both sides. Then we get x minus 2 squared plus y squared equals 4. So we have a center of 2, 0, and a radius of 2. And that does make me realize I made a mistake in part A. So let me go up and fix that after I graph this. So the reason why I said the radius is equal to 2 is because r squared is equal to 4. Well, up here in part A, r squared is equal to 31/12. So r is 1.6 instead of 2.6. So the circle's a little smaller than I originally graphed. And that's it for section 7.3.